Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. We're glad you're here with us this morning. It's always good to be with you. Remember, hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'll like it, and you can subscribe to it. Oh, we're here today with some of the movers and shakers of real estate appraisal industry. Now, our guest today we have had before, Brad Bassey. Brad is out of California. Brad has a varied background. He's done a whole lot of stuff in his life. He got into real estate appraisal relatively late after a successful business career. And as we chat with Brad this morning, one of the things we're looking at is his decisions. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll leave that up to you. Oh, I'll leave that up to Brad. So, Brad, good morning. How are you?
I am doing well, Tim. Thank you very much. I'm always a little nervous when you introduce this movers and shakers thing after I have to be behind Craig Morley and Jamie Owen and a few others that are probably more movers and shakers than I am, but I do appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. And quite frankly, it's a big honor to be here. So I really appreciate you reaching out to me.
No, Brad, thank you. We are grateful that you are there to reach out to simply because you have a level of expertise that some appraisers don't have and to which other appraisers are aspiring. So, Brad, okay, just to put this into context, we're recording this at in the middle of October, 2023, and things are changing. Okay, 2 years ago, we were turning away work. We're not turning away work now. In fact, many appraisers are looking at their watches and going, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock, only 2 more hours till lunch." And they're wondering what it is they're going to do. Now, I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on you or brag about you, but you don't have that problem. Why don't you have that problem?
Um, I was I was really fortunate when I got started in this business, and just to kind of put the background to everything, I've been doing this 31 years. Started in 1992. Prior to that, I was a senior executive in a corporation. And unlike a lot of other appraisers, I did not have a family member in the appraisal business. I stumbled into it by accident. And that accident happened to be worked out really well because I had two really good mentors. But I also got a really good experience because in 1992, the market had rolled over and was kind of hiccuping. And for the certified general guys, they'd already seen the market roll over because of the Lincoln Savings and Thrift issue back in the late 1980s. So I saw firsthand what was happening with the first mentor. He had a family owned business, and I realized that being in the lending world full time can be hazardous and dangerous to your health and your well being, just because you're at the mercy of someone else. So fast forward, I didn't stay very long because in 1992 things were changing. As a family-owned business, they were trying to feed their family members. I was not one, so I stepped away from that business, from their mentoring ship, and got tied in with someone else up in the LA area. And I got a firsthand view of Beverly Hills, Malibu, Brentwood, Pacific Palisades. So I cut my teeth on large custom homes. I cut my teeth on proposed construction. I cut my teeth on residential vacant land. And from there, it just kind of grew. I realized that this business, if you've got all of your eggs in one basket, it can be extremely painful. And I saw it early on just because of what my initial experience was. So I decided to make sure that yes, I was doing the lending work, but I also wanted to make sure that I was doing some other things along those, along the lines for residential appraising. And one of the things I did is I found a certified general MAI who was doing eminent domain, and I got involved with that as working with him and doing residential work. So I learned about easements and those types of things. And then it came along, fast forward, the mid 2000s, and I realized that doing lending work was going to become dangerous and hazardous to my health because Countrywide was doing 125% financing. And I'm like going, not with my appraisal report signature, you're doing this. And that was really a kick to the curb for me to make sure that I started diversifying my business. which became my mantra, was diversifying my business. And a lot of corporations diversify their businesses. They have their hands in multiple pies. And so I took that same um, adage, if you will. And then along came 2007 and 8 and 9 and the Great Recession of '08. And then 2010 and the Dodd-Frank bill. And then all of a sudden we ended up with the AMC model. And as soon as I saw the AMC model, I went, oh, okay, things are going to change quickly. And they did. And then all of a sudden the broadcast emails started and I was like, no, I'm not going to deal with this. Um, Mainly because I was also one of those appraisers that understood what my average cost for appraisal was. I also understood what my average hourly rate was and my average fee. And I'm not saying that I'm certainly not God's gift to the appraisal world, but I just recognized that that model was not going to fit with my business model. And I did not want to work 9 days a week, 28 to 29 to 30 hours a day, trying to meet that hamster wheel. And it just wasn't in my modus operandi. So I started branching off. I started getting involved with very basic things. I started doing some family law work. Um, I then took a class from being taught by attorneys, which if people want to branch off and get into different parts and different avenues, not that you have to do litigation work, but I strongly recommend that people go seek out attorneys teaching classes on how to be an expert witness. I know that there are classes out there taught by appraisers teaching appraisers how to be an expert witness, but I would recommend that you go to the source and get an attorney that wants to stand in front of the room and embarrass the ever living heck out of you in front of a room full of 30, 50, 90, 120 people to get the point across that you can't operate the way you've always operated. And I've always been open to change. And I think that's also benefited me. And that's kind of how things started to change. It was really 2005 with, or four, I guess, 2004 with Countrywide changing their model of doing all sorts of crazy lending type things. And then the recession and then the AMC world coming around. And I just made a business decision that I was going to have to go the other way. And I struggled for a while. It was slow doing the kind of things I was doing because I was pushing a lot of clients away. AMCs were reaching out to me, and the FHA world was going crazy, and because of all the REO business and stuff. And I just made a conscious decision that that's not where I want to go. So I started getting educated. I started taking classes that weren't the typical classes. And I also was making sure that I was getting the classes and networking with other people. And I also realized early on, because of my mentor, that you need to call and confirm sales. And while I was doing that, I would take off my appraiser hat and put on my sales hat. And I would start interviewing the agents, and I would get them comfortable and have a business discussion with them. And my network grew. And that's how my non-lender business grew, was because of because of real estate agents and brokers. And then from there, I started teaching classes to the brokerages, talking about Appraisal 101. And that's kind of how things mushroomed, and it started to grow from there.
Let's talk a minute about your reticence to follow the AMC model. A lot of appraisers basically don't do anything else. They just deal with AMCs. And in the past, they've made a good living, quite frankly. Whereas you rejected that relatively early on as just not what you wanted to do. And you indicated that you didn't want to be on the hamster wheel, working 9 days a week and 40 hours a day. Okay, that's fine. But if that's all an appraiser's done, Brad, if that's the skill set, the only skill set the appraiser has, how is the appraiser going to make the transition away from GSE work to something else if they don't, for example, have your business background? Now, I know this because you've told me you have an MBA. Now, that gives you a lot of training in business, in entrepreneurial efforts, in public speaking. in selling, quite frankly. Well, those are all areas that appraisers have, unless they got it like you got it, have absolutely no experience whatsoever. So okay, so we've got, Fred and Jane appraiser. I was going to say Ricky and Lucy, and you and I'd understand that, but nobody else would get that.
Lucy, I'm
Maybe
home.
she's got some splaining to do. Brad gets that. Nobody else was perfectly okay.
That's all right.
Okay, you come from a different background. You came into this with a different skill set. So, and I'm going to talk about your skill set more in a minute, but let's talk about this part of your skill set. An appraiser doesn't have your business training. An appraiser doesn't have your training in critical thinking. Okay, what is it they're supposed to do if they want to, I don't want to say abandon, but if they want to expand past AMC and GSE work, how would they go about doing that?
Really good question. And I guess the best way to describe it would be understand what your strengths are, understand what your weaknesses are. Most people, most appraisers, and I'm going to put out a blanket, that are genuinely good people. And they have the ability to interact, but for some reason, they have been told that they can't interact with agents, and they consider them the enemy almost. And I'd never quite understood that. And I think you have to change your mindset that what I do is not because of my MBA. It's probably got more emphasis with my SRA designation that I got, and we can talk about that a little bit. And I'm not a big you know what my feelings are about the AI on certain situations, and I'm not talking about artificial intelligence here. But the SRA has helped me. But I think the biggest thing is getting educated. And I'm going to put out a shameless plug for you, and I don't get paid for this, but you really have to expand your knowledge. And when I say that is understand what highest and best use is. And by any shape of the imagination, I'm not perfect in highest and best use. But for the love of all gosh, please understand what highest and best use. And it's not checking a box. And understand that there is education out there, like the programs that you and Scott Cullen have put on with the Excel grids and setting up killer work file. Understanding those basics, and because a lot of people, they use Spark and they use Synapse, or they've got Data Master, all the whatever they're doing, that's all fine and good, but you got to understand the basics. And I think if you get into these different types of programs, and if they go on another shameless plug, go and get a couple of your small books that you have written, and I say small, not in the size, but they're not written as War and Peace, they're different segments. That's a really good way to get educated, because you are on this hamster wheel and you're doing AMC work and you want to branch out. Get educated. Understand that there's more than checking a box on a form in order to do the type of work that you need to do. And some of my work is also consulting, where I don't do an appraisal. And I put together, an engagement letter. And that's something else that a lot of appraisers, they can do, they just don't do. And that is understand what an engagement letter is and how to structure it and how to put it together. And people like Peter Christensen, who's got some really good examples of it. AI's got some examples of engagement letters. I mean, start from the very beginning. Act like a professional. A lot of us are under. Apparently, we have this mindset. A lot of appraisers that we're a commodity, and we're not a commodity. We're professionals, and we should be paid like professionals and treated like professionals. And I think if you can expand your education base and understand the nuances of what goes on in appraising, then you are going to also be able to have a better conversation with your clients. And part of my work is estate work and family law work. Well, on the estate side of things, I'm not an estate tax planner. I'm not an estate income tax accountant. But I went out and I made sure that I understood some of the basics with that by doing research and letting Google, back in the day, since we're making reference to Lucy and the rest of the crew, I, instead of letting my fingers do the walking in the yellow pages, do a Google search and get educated and understand what's going on with 706 estate tax returns, and get an understanding of what's out there, and what's required. Don't just blindly run into it, because you're going to get burned, and you could get burned badly. But an appraisal is an appraisal, but understand how you're going to communicate with your potential client, and be respectful with your client, and take the time to talk with them on the phone. A lot of my business comes because of referrals now, because other people have dealt with me and they understand that I'm not going to spend 2 minutes on the phone with them, and I'm not going to give them a fee quote over the phone without having researched their property. Yes, that takes time out of my day, and yes, that I put together a full proposal, but I've already got templates created, so it's not that complicated for me to do, but it took some time. And right now, if you have the time, because you're not as busy as you once were, then get educated. Get on the Peter Christensen site, take some different additional classes, and also get a website. A lot of my business comes from my website, and you know, it's it's not a matter of selling; it's just a matter of presenting yourself. And then I get reviews that I have put in, Google reviews that are put in there. And a lot of my business comes from people that look at my website and they see that I've got, you know, probably in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 reviews and praise emails from people that I've done business with. And they feel like they can trust me just by reading that other information. So, you have to step out of your comfort factor a little, and it's the business is there, and you just have to be prepared to take it on. And are you going to, stumble and scratch your nose and bump your forehead? Sure, but it's not the end of the world. It's kind of like when you've done a job for the AMC, and you've got an order and you pull up in front of it and you realize, oh my God, this is a freaking geodesic dome home. And all of a sudden you realize, so, you stub your toe, but you get the job done. Well, it's the same kind of thing with private party work. It's understanding what the nuances are and understanding what's out there and getting educated. And then, and getting in front of agents. You don't have to be a professional Toastmaster speaker. Get in front of the brokerage offices and go and speak with them. And do a little 101 course, and how to prepare to meet an appraiser, or whatever your kind of scenario is. And also, the other thing too is, a lot of these people that are doing AMC work, make sure that you're keeping up with what Fannie Mae is doing. And I'm not talking about the forms, and I'm not talking about the property data collectors and those kind of things. Just make sure that you understand what the rules and regs are for Fannie, because a lot of people talk about, hey, you can be at the top of the A1 plus list for an AMC or a lender because you've done your homework, and you can get a better fee because of that. And they're not shopping you around like a lot of the AMCs are doing. Um, so, that's kind of my general recommendation. And I think it's just get educated, and don't be afraid to step outside of the box, but make sure you get educated along the way. Take time to get involved with some classes that are eminent domain related, like an easement class that's taught by the International Right of Way Association. There's all sorts of different programs out there that you can get involved with that expands your breadth, that you just don't know. It's the old "we don't know what we don't know" kind of deal, but those types of classes will help. And I think probably the getting my SRA was gigantic. Does it make a difference for lenders? Absolutely not. Do most of my clients know what an SRA is? No, but it helped me personally, because I learned things in the report writing section, and how to format, how to put things together, that I had never done before. So I think it's all about expansion of knowledge, and understanding that there are definitions of market value that are not Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac related. And you have to understand that part of the puzzle too. But it's all about getting educated. It's all about doing some research and understanding what's out there, and what can we do, and how can we make ourselves better. And if they do that, they can step into the world that I'm doing, and feel pretty comfortable.
Okay, now you said earlier that you started out residentially. It happened to be very high-end residential, but you started out residentially.
Yep.
And then you said, okay, well, this is lovely, but I want to expand my skill set.
Yep.
So then you got with another appraiser who did eminent domain work, and you learned
Yes.
that skill set. And as subsets of that, you were dealing with easements, and there are various types of easement evaluation assignments. And you mentioned that you were not happy with the AMC model because of the hours and the pay, etc. So you took a skill set that you had, which was residential
Mhm.
originally, but then you purposely made the decision to expand. It's not like you got a call one day and somebody said, "Oh, come over and start doing eminent domain for me." You specifically,
No.
this is where I want to go.
Okay.
So you you sat down one night over an adult beverage or two, and you said, "Okay, where I am is fine, but it's not where I want to be. I want to be further, higher, farther, whatever."
Mhm.
So, okay, you did the eminent domain thing. You got with the attorneys, you got the training, etc. Now, you mentioned Jamie Owen. Jamie said more or less the same thing when he and I had our interview a little while ago, in that he had to sit down and assess where he was and where he wanted to be. Now, my question is not so much that process, but from the time you sat down and said, "Here is where I am, but this is not where I want to be," how long did it take you to decide where you wanted to be? How long did it take you to decide the pathway you wanted to follow to get where you wanted to be? And then once you got on that path, how long did it take you to get to the well of cool spring water that you wanted to end up at?
It probably took, I guess it probably took me about 4 to 6 months to make some decisions that I needed to expand my practice. Um, sometimes I recognize for me, sometimes I have a short attention span. So being a certified general and doing a report that took 3 months to get out wasn't my cup of tea. But it was more that I recognized that there's more to than appraising than just going out and measuring a house. And I realized that there were obstacles out there, different things that were going on. And I guess my first introduction to it was when I had a home builder call me on the phone and said, "Hey," because I'd done work for their mortgage company on a direct basis before the AMC world. And they called me on the phone and they said, "Hey, got a situation where a fence line was put in the wrong place and we need to reset this fence, but we need to figure out what the valuation of the land is." And instead of saying, "No, that's not something that I do," I told the client, I said, "Look, haven't been down that road before, but I do know some people around town. Let me have a conversation with them and give me a day, and then I'll get back with you." And from that, it took me, I got back with them. I had a couple of conversations with some people that I knew and trusted. Again, that goes back to the networking and doing some in-class program work versus everybody wanting to do Zoom because they can do it in their PJs and their bunny slippers. Um, that networking thing is huge, but it probably took about 4 to 6 months for me to sit down, look at it, think about the different things that were out there, and then to talk to other appraisers and go to some organizational meetings, AI meetings, and those kind of things, and just sit down and talk to different appraisers and find out what are they doing, what type of business are they in, and then that kind of helped me formulate the idea that I'm not really sure that I'm a certified general type person, but I know that I want to get into some more complex work because I just didn't want to feel like a commodity. And that was, I guess, the internal thing inside my brain. And it took about 4 to 6 months to get it up and running. And then I'd say probably within I took a couple of class. I guess probably within maybe a year and a half, somewhere around the mid 2000s. I was starting to, spread my wings and reach out to some different people, some builders. I talked to some, uh, had some exposure to right of ways. So I was having some conversations with some city people, talking to other appraisers. And so I guess the whole thing probably took about a year and a half total. But, and in the interim, I was doing my regular lending business. But again, my lending business was more niched. And I guess that's probably the other thing that I will throw out is even in a market that's very slow today, appraisers, in my opinion, really need to find a niche and they need to get known for that niche. How long does that take? A while. But if you don't take, as they say, if you don't take the first step, you're never going to get where you're going. You're all going to be standing in the same spot. So I took the first step and I developed a niche. And a lot of people look at me and they say, "Oh my God, this maniac's wearing a cowboy hat." Well, guess what? That's part of my brand. It's also part of my niche. I live in an area that has, ag land and horse ranches and that type of thing, but I found a niche. And maybe that niche is 2 to 4 units, or maybe that niche is custom homes, or maybe that niche is proposed construction. But whatever it is, develop a niche and get good at it and take classes in it. I've taken probably, I'm going to take a wild guess, 5 or 6, maybe 7 different classes on land appraisals. A lot of it's the same thing over, rehashing the same points, but every now and then I get one good takeaway out of each one of those classes. And that's where I want to go. And so land was one of those things that I wanted to deal with. Now, a lot of the land inside the area where I live at, I'm based out of Temecula, California, and a lot of the area is starting to develop, but I still have some rural land back behind me, and I'm known for land. I'm also known for horse ranches because I was raised in the Midwest and on a small farm in town, so I've got a little bit of a background there. But I developed the knowledge for that, and I took a class. There was somebody teaching a class on equestrian properties, and I took a class on it. And then I took a class on a proposed construction. It was offered by one of the lenders, because the lenders are desperate for people, even in a quiet market. I've had a couple of proposed constructions come through from direct lenders, and they want somebody they know and trust that can actually give them site value and or knows how to extract site value, which then goes back to taking cost classes and understanding, how do I develop this? Is it allocation or is it extraction? Which is the best way to go? But it's all about education. It's all about taking continuing ed, but actually taking it and learning and getting involved in the class. So that was kind of a long-winded response to your question, but 4 to 6 months to get up and running, and probably about a year to year and a half to get everything moving.
Okay, you live in southeastern California, but
Mhm.
given your niche, you work all over the state, don't you?
I do, with a couple of my litigation work. Yes, I work predominantly, yeah, probably Central California South. I have been involved with the couple of horse ranches that were a little bit further up because they were large ranches. Um, and I chuckled because everybody was telling me how much money they were making from their income off of their boarding facilities. And I asked 2 basic questions, and they kind of all went, well. And I said, okay, so really the income is not part of your horse ranch facility. And then I was able to do it because I'm not certified general. But I was able to take on the task because of what was actually going on and the reality of what was happening. And so there was a couple of ranches that I dealt with, and then I also do wildfire litigation support work. So I've been involved with 13 cases, wildfire cases, on a litigation support basis. And that's taken me from San Diego County up to Santa Barbara County.
Okay, Central and Southern California. All right.
Yeah.
Let's get back to your SRA. Okay, full disclosure, I'm an MAI. All right, you're an SRA. What motivated you to get an SRA?
The actual motivation was because I wanted to do more litigation work.
Okay.
And
All
attorney, and I will give AI their credit, Appraisal Institute, I will give them their credit and their due. They have marketed and made it such that if you have an MAI or an SRA, you apparently walk on water in the eyes of the attorneys. And I went to, and I'll give you a good example of this. I belong to a couple of different organizations. And for those of you that do want to step off of the curb, I would recommend taking a look at your local bar association and see what's available, and pay their dues as an associate member and go sit in the meetings. Sit in the back of the room, get a lay of the land, and keep showing up, keep putting your face in front of them. But I was at a bankruptcy forum, and there were 3 bankruptcy judges from federal court sitting in the front of the room. And they were talking about some different things, and an attorney had asked them a question about some things, and it was dealing with the residential property in bankruptcy. And the judge literally sat there and went, well, I've seen 3 different appraisal reports. 2 of them didn't have credentials, and 1 of them did. And the one with the credentials, I looked at that report first. And then I looked at the other 2 reports and I went, eh. So I leaned towards the one with credentials. Well, what he was talking about was somebody had an SRA designation. And so that supported the fact that my conclusion was correct to go get my SRA, and because it will help me in front of attorneys. It help make me a better appraiser? Does it mean you're the greatest thing since sliced bread and warm butter? No, but it gives you a leg up over other people. And then on top of that, I did seek out, I went to an organization to get training in litigation, how to be an expert witness. And I hired 2 attorneys, and I paid a bunch of money for them to take a look at my resume and convert it into an actual CV. And for those that aren't familiar, it's curriculum vitae. And that's what they use in the world of expert witness. But by having that CV, when I'm having a conversation with a family law attorney or an estate attorney or their paralegals, I say, hey, can I get your email address? Just having the initial conversation. Can I get your email address so that I can send you some information about myself, the link to my website, and also send you a copy of my CV? As soon as I say that I have a copy of my CV and I send them that email, I automatically move to the top of the list. Does it mean that I'm better than the other appraisers they've talked to? I don't know, but it moved me to the top of the list. And the amount of work that I get because my CV has been reworked by attorneys, I told the attorneys that they undercharged me, the ones that wrote it for me, helped put it together. But that was just another conclusion where I made that decision to spend the money to become more professional in appearance, having a CV. And even for family law, move yourself to the head of the list just by having a CV. It's a very simple process. When you're having a conversation with an estate attorney, send them your CV. All of a sudden, they're going to start referring people to you, and then treat their clients like you would like to be treated. And all of a sudden, the word will get back to that attorney that the appraiser was very patient with me. They explained to me the process. They walked through everything with me. They spent time at the house. Those are the types of things that help separate you and allow you to make the transition from doing the AMC work to starting to do more non-lending work. And it takes time. It's not something that, the light switch turns on and off with, but now's the time to start building that. And if there are shifts in the way the appraisal world is going to work in the future with regards to residential, then now's a good time. It's a better time than any, especially if you're slow right now, to start upgrading yourself and getting educated and taking some AI classes and take a look at IRWA classes and expand your knowledge base, because that's what's going to be important, is to segregate yourself from everybody else that won't make that transition and make that jump.
Brad, you mentioned the IRWA, just so everybody knows, that's the International Right-of-Way Association.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
All right. Now, Brad, as we wrap this up, everybody knows that Fannie and Freddie are revamping how we're going to report appraisals. And when that finally kicks in, and that is still it's an uncertainty when, it's not if, it will, but the uncertainty is when that finally kicks in. You and I grew up where you pulled a form off a pad and you rolled it into the typewriter and you started typing. And today it's still somewhat equivalent. You bring up the reporting form and you start filling the report out from left to right and top to bottom. And that's going to go away. And it's going to be, you're going to have to, you're going to fill out an Excel grid, which through the magic of whatever magic they're going to apply, is going to suck that into a report and basically write the report for you so you don't have to. Now, I raise that issue because of this. I've talked to a lot of appraisers, and let's just say that aspect does not thrill them. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
In doing non-GSE work, because it isn't Freddie, because it isn't Fannie, the appraiser is still going to be able, metaphorically, to pick up that pad, roll it into the typewriter, and start typing, because the judge, the client, the special master doesn't want a GSE form. They want something short, to the point, simple, easy to read, that they can get through in 15 or 20 minutes or a maximum of an hour and know what that property's worth, which will still allow the appraiser to use the forms with which they're currently comfortable. Now, given that, do you think that is a reason to transition out of GSE work into non-GSE work, or is that just a detail that nobody's going to worry about?
Well, yes, it's another reason to take a good look at what's going on. And I'll throw one other quick anecdote out. For those of you that have got lost in the mud and didn't realize that Fannie Mae changed their requirements for condominiums and how appraisers are supposed to look at condominiums, you better go back and take a look at some of Fannie Mae's. I don't remember what their mortgagee letter was that came out, but you better go take a look at it, because a lot of appraisers are going to get caught, shall we say, straddling a barbed wire fence, and that can get to be painful. Because there's some requirements in there for appraisers to start walking the entire condo project and to start looking at budgets and reserves and looking at the minutes to see what's going on. So yeah, I think it's incentive to definitely start taking a look. And that's one of the other reasons why you want to get educated and take a look at different things, because you may want to do some things on narrative, on a Word doc, and push the dictating button and start talking. Of course, with me, with my slang, it's a little hard, but you have to, those are things that you need to branch out with, and understand you got to create an executive summary so that they can get to the nuts and bolts real quick. And if they need to detail, they'll know where to find it later on. And so I think they really do need to start taking a look at this, because there are going to be some changes, and quite frankly, I haven't seen the report. I've seen little bits and pieces of what Fannie's going to bring out, but I'm not sure that I kind of like the way I've seen that form, because everything's supposed to be in one spot. And who knows how that's going to work? I don't know. I'm not going to do a bunch of it because I've only got one direct lender that I still do business with, and I'm not sure how they're going to unravel it. I'm sure they will need it, but so I'll need to be educated on it a little. But I'm not sure that I'm not terrified of that. I'm more terrified of what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are doing, and the extra scope creep that continues to come. And with the scope creep, easy for me to say, your fees don't creep up. And I think that's the other thing that the appraisers need to start taking a good hard look at. And don't bid your non-lending jobs like you were bidding an AMC job. Because if you're bidding that like that, you're losing money. And eventually the client's going to wonder, I got BASSI's proposal over here, and he's going to charge me 1,000. And I got so-and-so's proposal over here that came in an email that's 3 lines, and they're charging me 375 or 3.25 or 300. Yeah, they may want to go with the lower bid, but they're all of a sudden going, wait a minute, what's going on here? So understand who you're doing business with and understand what your value is, because we are professionals. We're not a commodity. AMCs have made us to be a commodity, but you're a professional. You should get paid like a professional and do the work of a professional and spend the time like a professional. So with the way this GSE thing is changing, I don't know where it's going to end up. The new form, I guess I'm not terrified of it. I kind of like the idea that, I put the photo of the sites and I put a description of the site of the things that I see all in one spot. That's fine because I don't really like a lot of phone calls back. People going, well, I can't find this. Well, if you'll turn to page 6 and go to line 138, you'll find it. Oh, which tells me they didn't read the damn thing in the first place. But that's okay. So yeah, I think they need to make changes. And I think now is the time. If you are in fact slow, now is really the time to start growing and start educating yourself and moving your business in that direction.
Brad, thank you. Words of wisdom from a wise man. We appreciate that. Brad, if someone wanted to get a hold of you to ask you questions, consult with you, etc., how would they do that?
Well, a couple of ways. My email address is pretty simple, and a guy wearing a cowboy hat likes to keep things simple. My email address is my first and last name run together with no periods or spaces. So it's Brad BASSI, and that's B as in Bravo, ASSI at yahoo.com. You can find me that way. You can find my website, which is Straw Hat Enterprises. I'm based out of Temecula. You can get my mobile number off of that. And then feel free to give me a call. And I'll be more than happy to spend time with appraisers if they want to call and have a conversation with me, because that's part of what my goal and my mission statement is to help guide people through the valuation process of quite possibly the single largest asset they may own. And whether you're an appraiser or whether you're a property owner or an attorney, I try to spend time with people. So if an appraiser's got questions about how I did something or how I look at something or my thoughts on it, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to spend whatever time is necessary.
And folks, just so you know, Brad is very friendly. He and I met at a convention a few years ago. He just walked up to me, shook my hand, and started talking. And yep, very friendly. So,
and there was a reason behind that too, Mr. Andersen. Oh, by the way, one last quick
Brad
shameless plug. One last quick shameless plug for you.
Go ahead.
And I'm not getting paid for this, folks. If you do step off into the world of non-lending and you are starting to write up some reports, I would highly recommend that you find a Tim Andersen or somebody like a Tim Andersen and you send your reports to them. Understand you need to put on your alligator skin because you may get some comments back that may ruffle your feathers a little bit. But be aware that they're there to make you better and to point out things that you can improve with. And so do a couple of non-lending jobs and then find somebody with a Tim Andersen's capability and qualifications and have them review your work, because it will be mind-changing and life-changing.
Brad, thank you. I appreciate that. So everybody, thank you for being with us here. Brad's website is strawhatenterprises.com. Brad BASSI at yahoo.com. Anybody needs to get a hold of me, Tim at theappraisersadvocate.com, and hit those like and subscribe buttons too. So Brad, thank you. I appreciate it. As always, my friend, it's a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to the next time we get to shake hands.
In person, and I'm hoping that's at the AXE conference next year.
That's what we're looking forward to. Thank you, Brad. We'll be in touch.
Tim. Thank you, sir.